We're going to complete the recreation of this add latitude longitude flow. For a complete overview on what this flow does, please check out the previous videos and we'll understand what we're going to do. In the very previous video, we got this data from the Webscraper. If you want to see how we built that, how we generated this Python code to do that for us, look at the last video. So we're going to be now finally wrapping up the Webscraper and stitching it with the latitude longitude data. So let's drag in our two imported data sets. We have the zip to lat long mapping, and then we have Webscraper test, which was the data that we got from the previous video from the Webscraper. So we want to now join these two data sets. And let's peek both of the data sets to see what we're working with and how we want to join them. So here we have every postal code in Massachusetts and their associated latitude and longitude. And now we will take a look at our web-scraped data to make sure that it's coming in how we expected and saw in the last video. So let's peek that, and we see that we have the postal code, which is important because we want to stitch them based on the postal code. We have zip name, which is this town and the state, and we have all of these different features about houses with that zip code. So we will put the zip codes on the left side and we'll put our web scrape data on the right side, like so. Now let's edit our join facet, and we will join by left, which means we're joining based on having all of the zip codes and latitude and longitudes from Massachusetts in there, and then match based on the associated zip codes from the web scrape data. So we want to find postal code in both of these data sets, and then we will update that. So let's make sure that this is doing what we expect. So let's peek right after the join. And we see here that we have a lot of missing values in a lot of these rows. So all of the latitude and longitudes are here, but no other values for all of these rows, which might be a little bit puzzling at first. But if we scroll down just a little bit here, we find a row that has values for everything. Values for all of our factors, values for postal code. We see it's Cheshire, Massachusetts. And the reason for this is this postal code in the web scrape data matched with the postal code in the left data. And since we joined based on that identifier, all of the rows are going to be empty except for the ones where they actually matched, and then it's going to read in the data from the left and right and stitch them together. So we want to be able to drop the missing values here. So one way that we can go about doing that is take a look at the zip name column here, where we have all of them are null, and only the ones that match will have some value and everything else is null. So let's take a look at that. Before we drop the missing values, to make it easier, it might help to select the target columns that we're interested in. So for example, let's take a look at just the average listing price, the latitude, the longitude, the postal code, and the zip name down here. So this way we're only dealing with a couple of columns. It'll be easier to track what we're working with. And then finally we will drop our missing values, and that is what we will export out to our clean data. So we can peek after the select to see that it's working, and we should only have, I believe, 5 columns in there. So Once again, all of these are null as we looked at, and if we scroll down here, we find this one which is not null and has our average listing price here. So let's now configure how we want to drop these missing values. So we want to drop by the row, we want to drop rows, and we want to drop a row that has any null values in our specified target columns. So our target column here is zip name, as we went over. So let's update that. And let's give a name to our exported data set here. We will call it cleaned housing data, LL for latitude, longitude. So let's update that. And now let's run the entire flow and take a look at what our exported data looks like. And then from there we can go into how to create that latitude longitude map. So right now it's running through everything and it should finish, and it does. It ran pretty quickly. So let's go ahead, let's take a look for a data set that's named cleaned housing data LL. So we go into data sets here and we have cleaned housing data. Let's take a look at it and see if those missing values were dropped as we expected them to be. And this looks great. We filtered missing values based on the zip name, and all of these zip names are non-null. And as you can see, it has all towns in Massachusetts that end in MA. We get the postal code, we get the latitude, we get the longitude, and we get that average listing price that we wanted to look at. So let's figure out how to create a nice map box using the latitude and longitude. So under cleaned housing data, let's select the 3 dots and hit add chart. And we'll call this map box demo. So let's create that. Now from here, since we know that we have latitude and longitude data, let's hit visualization type and search for map. There are a lot of different maps, and I encourage you to play around with the different maps and look at the different visuals. I found that the map box is one of the best ones, especially for latitude and longitude data. So let's select that. And now it's asking which column we want to be longitude. Obviously, we already have latitude and longitude here, so we'll select those. And let's run the query first and see what our map box looks like. So as you can see here, all of our houses are in Massachusetts, which makes sense. As we zoom in and out, the points get more and more refined. That's due to our clustering radius variable down here. So if we change that to 40, we should see them sort of bunch up a little bit more. And so now we can see a little bit more in depth of which regions. If we made it 20, it would become even more dense. So I think 40 is a good place to leave it at. And now we can see sort of the breakdown of where the houses are based on that latitude and longitude. Now, there's a lot of things to play around with here. One thing is let's actually utilize that average listing price that we wanted to look at. So if we go down to labeling and we look at average listing price, and we want to look at the mean, the average of the listing prices. So let's run that query. And now as we just zoom out just a little bit, we sort of see the average listing price for each of these regions. And as we zoom in, you can get an even more refined view. We can see exactly sort of the zip code of that house right there. And to see that it makes sense, the larger bubbles obviously have a higher average price. If we zoom in on these 2 zip codes over here, they're extremely expensive. And that's because they're on the island Nantucket, which is notoriously very expensive. Same with all of these island homes right here, Martha's Vineyard, etc. It's we expect that those will be more expensive than some homes here in the suburbs of Boston and whatnot. So that is an overview of detailed recreation of how to recreate the latitude longitude map, as well as stitch all of it together. The last and final thing that we can do to bring these two parts together, the Webscraper and the latitude longitude, is let's take out the exported data from the Webscraper and do it with just the Webscraper and completely in one flow. So let's just delete this facet and import in a new custom facet. This is exactly what we did in the last video, except now we're just going to connect it directly in one flow rather than taking the exported data from the previous flow and using it as imported data here. So let's quickly go back and grab those 3 lines of code. So right here, so let's grab these, and then we will add it to our custom Webscraper here. Self-serve Webscraper, let's add that. It's already aligned. We'll update. We need to specify the table side. So we'll put it as right, and now we'll update it. And now when we run the flow, we are essentially combining both of the steps, the Webscraper as well as the stitching and the joining and the dropping missing values process all into one flow. So let's run it and make sure that it works here. It might take a little bit of time because now we've sort of combined both of the flows. So it's web scraping the data up front here in this custom facet, and then it's taking this data, stitching it, dropping the missing values, and getting our exported data. But we should get the exact same result, and nothing should change. We should still have that nice map box. We're just now combining it all into one flow. So there we go, it ran, and let's just make sure everything is the same and what we expected. We still go down here to charts, map box demo. And if we go in and make the map box, we should still have those 5 columns. So already it looks right. We'll set that radius to 40. Let's label by zip name, rather average listing price, mean. Let's run the query, and we get exactly what we did in the previous step here. So that's how we sort of just going to combine those, and we now have, we're in flows here. We now have one flow here which looks identical to the flow that we overviewed at the beginning of these set of videos. So hope that helped as a nice recreation of the Webscraper, as well as stitching it with the latitude longitude data and creating the map box. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I encourage you guys to try to recreate on your own. Thank you.